Hey, what's up? Hope everyone's doing all right. So, geez, I don't look super awake, but it's all right. I had a long day today. All right, so this is week 47, and it's 2 Corinthians through Philippians. And this is also a long reading. The last week was a pretty long reading. This week is also a long reading. I guess the thing that stands out the most is it's just kind of Paul's letters. And I guess there's not really anything that stands out too much more than it's just kind of direction of the early churches and how the early churches should behave themselves, so the members of the church should behave themselves. I guess what kind of stands out the most is, sorry, I'm so tired, man. I gotta get some sleep. I read yesterday. I just got back from, or actually got back from work, and um, I ate some food and stuff, but sorry. Um, I guess it's like early direction. The thing that stands out the most is, I guess, the disagreement in the early churches. And so if God's telling people what to do and they're all prophets, like, why would they have disagreement if they're all having like what God wants them to do, if they're all speaking for God in a sense, then why would they have disagreement? Like, what would they be disagreeing on? Does God disagree with himself if the prophets disagree with each other? Um, does God disagree with himself? I don't know, man. That's a deep question. If there's no one else like God besides God, if there's only one God, then God would be only able to have some questions to himself. So does he disagree with? Do you disagree with yourself? Yes, I guess, but I don't know where myself ends and something else begins. So does God disagree with himself? I don't know. Do prophets disagree with the other prophets in the Old Testament? It doesn't seem like there is like any disagreement with the prophets. Do the prophets disagree with each other in the New Testament? I guess it's like a different type of prophet. Paul and Peter seem to disagree. Oh, it's Paul seems to suggest that he disagrees with Peter, or Peter's wrong in some kind of way. Are they prophets? Are the apostles prophets? It depends on what you mean by a prophet and what you mean by an apostle. Like, what is your definition of these things? What do you think? I don't know if God disagrees with himself, because that's like beyond my comprehension. Do prophets disagree with other prophets? Yes, because they're still man. Do they disagree with each other in the Bible? No. Is Paul and Peter prophets? Oh, I don't know, man. That's a lot. I don't know. Maybe we'll figure it out. Some good questions. I'll say, so for Monday, I have church to be glorious, no spot or wrinkle, but holy without blemish. And so this quote is actually saying, it's like the church is supposed to be like how a man, like how the church is supposed to be like this, but this is like also referring to how a man should treat his wife. Um, but I still think it's true about the church. So, but I don't know. It's also about how a man should be treating his wife. So that's also a hard one. So Tuesday I have, so yeah, like I said, 2 Corinthians, and so Tuesday the main thought that our main idea that I have is how to handle a situation when your brother sins against you. And because I switched to last Friday, and last Friday's was that, I think, but that's gonna be you're about the price. If you have a choice, be not servants of men. Um, and so, how do you handle a situation if your brother sins against you? Well, if your brother sins against you, then you're supposed to go to him. And the thing, you go to him first, and there's like a way of doing this. But the question is, what if, what if another, like a non-believer, sins against you? Do you handle it the same way as when your brother sins against you? And I would say no, you don't handle it the same way, because you're playing by different rules and stuff. So I think this is the way that you handle a situation if your brother sins against you. But I don't think this is necessarily the way that you handle a situation if a non-believer sins against you. How do you handle a situation when a non-believer sins against you? I guess every one of those situations are different. That's how you handle each one of those situations is between you and God. And so I don't really know how to do that. And then so Wednesday I have flee fornication. It talks about fleeing fornication and every other sin is outside of the body, except for fornication, which is inside the body. And so it doesn't necessarily mean it's the worst sin, but it just says flee fornication. For every other sin is like this, but fornication is this way. And so flee fornication. I don't necessarily think it's the worst sin, but it's a unique sin, and it has a unique effect on each person. And I do feel like fornication has, a unique effect that other sins don't have. So I think all sins are bad, right? Obviously, but fornication affects you in a different type of way than other sins do. Oh man! So you want to flee it, and it's going to affect you in a bad way. How does it affect you different than any other sin? Well, the two become one flesh. So you're like, if you're fornicating with another person, you're both sinning, and so it's and you're like both becoming one flesh, and so you're becoming another flesh. You're becoming flesh with like another sinner, but we're all sinners, but you're becoming flesh with that other sinner while they're in the midst of their sinning, and so that's obviously gonna not be beneficial. What do you want, Jojo? What do you want, will you? I'm trying to make a video here, Dub. What are you doing, Jojo? So, I don't really think it's a good idea to have a cat lay on your lap. I don't usually let a cat lay on my lap. I just want something. Okay, and then so Thursday I have be not unequally yoked with non-believers. And so this is a hard one, right? Because like, what does that exactly mean? I think that you just don't want to be unequally yoked. Like you don't want to be, spending the same amount of time that you would with a believer as a non-believer. And I think you just want to spend all your time you can with the Christians, Christian brothers. And then so Friday I have tithing. And I think for tithing, like I know this video is pretty lame, but I'm just really tired. I think for tithing though, something that's not as lame as for tithing is like, do you think that should you tithe regardless of where the money goes? I give 10% of my money to the church, and so I give 10% of my money to the church. It doesn't matter what church I give it to. I gave my 10%. I did my part, and it's up to the church to do with their part. And so I don't have any responsibility for what the church does with that. What do you think? I think that's not true. I think that if you're tithing and you're giving 10% of your money or whatever percent of your money, you're responsible for what your money's doing and where your money's going. So I don't think you could be like, okay, I did my part. I tithed my 10%. I did well. And it doesn't really matter, what the person does with that money because I just gave my 10%. I think back in the day, in the Old Testament, like you gave your 10% to the church and that was your responsibility, or you're more than your 10%. You gave your tithing to the church and that was like your responsibility. But I think now, that if you don't have somewhere to put your money that's good, I think it's better for you to not give money than to give money that's bad and it's going to hurt. But I don't think you should just give away your money because you're supposed to and just say, okay, I gave my tithing and so therefore I should be blessed. When in fact giving your money could be bad because you're giving your money to bad things. So that's how I feel about that. Alright, this is the shortest video I've done. Kept it around 10 minutes, but I'm just kind of rambling. I need to get some sleep. And I just want to make sure that I make a video every week. I try to make it around 15 minutes each video, but this video, some videos I got closer to 20 minutes, so it seems like reasonable that, videos could be 10 minutes if they're just not really, if I'm just rambling on. So yeah, hope everyone's doing okay. God bless and happy truth seeking.